Good morning, traders. I'm Emily Vani, the CEO of the Investment Banking Institute and your host here at NewsWare's Trade Talk. Joining me is trading anchor Bill Olson, who brings more than 30 years of institutional trading experience to our program. At Trade Talk, we provide the facts, themes, and trading ideas for the day ahead. Today is Thursday, August 7th. Sweeping tariffs are now in effect as Wall Street comes off a strong session yesterday. All three major indices closed higher. The Dow added 81 points or 0.18%. The S&P 500 jumped 45 points or about 0.75%. The Nasdaq gained 252 points or 1.21%. Bill, let's get into Thursday's action with what is happening in the markets this morning.
Hi, yes. Good morning, Emily. And listen, I'm watching the S&Ps this morning, and we're showing we've been showing positive activity all morning long, which is good to see. I mean, we're off our earlier highs. I mean, we were up 0.68%. Now we're up 0.56%, a little over half of 1%. But that's very positive. And, there's a couple of catalysts going on here that are causing these strong gains. Number one, yesterday you had multiple Fed officials speaking. You had Neil Kashkari of Minneapolis Fed. You had Fed Governor Lisa Cook. You had San Francisco Fed Bank President Mary Daly, and they all came out very concerned over the recent labor market figures. Last week's non-farm payroll report, and they're really indicating that they're going to be, proposing and going to be, agreeing with a rate cut as soon as September. So, markets are seeing that. They are hearing that, and that is positive for the markets. And let's face it, the Bank of England, they're having their interest rate meeting today, and they're likely to cut rates today. So the interest rate front rates seem to be going a little lower. Then there's the news on the Ukrainian Russia war. I mean, yesterday, President Trump announced that he's expected to meet live in person with Russian President Putin, and that could happen as soon as next week. And he's going to meet with Ukraine's President Zelenskyy shortly afterwards. And the idea of these meetings really intended to negotiate a resolution to the Russian-Ukraine conflict. He had his envoy Witkoff over there yesterday, and he indicated that there's a willingness to talk. So this is coming right ahead of the sanctions that were supposed to be hit on Russian oil. So yeah, positive. That's positive, and you're seeing Europe running because of that as well. And then you look at the corporate news. I mean, Apple unveiled a major investment in the U.S. at the White House yesterday, and at the same time, President Trump indicated that tech companies that invest in the U.S., are gonna, could be insulated from his 100% tariffs on semiconductors. So that's something to keep an eye on. The details are sketchy right now, but there will be more to come. Jobless claims, they're coming out today. They're due out this morning. And after last week's non-farm payrolls report, this is going to be a key one to watch. In terms of earnings, Upwork, Dash, DraftKings, TKO, they're all trading higher after earnings. Airbnb, YETI, MetLife, Zillow, they're all trading a little lower. And after the bell today, you get earnings from Gilead, Flutter, Trade Desk, Take-Two Interactive, Pinterest, Expedia, TWLO, WYNN Resorts, and CART, which is Instacart or Maple, how they're called. But lots of good stuff. And then we're turning our attention over to Europe to see what the action is over in Europe. And you're looking at the DAX. The DAX is up 374 points. That's like that's over 1.5% this morning. I mean, corporate earnings and possible true stocks between Russia and Ukraine, that's really helping lift those markets. The FTSE's down. The FTSE's down, about 0.8% or 73 points. They're awaiting that interest rate decision, and then that's coming out, I think 9 a.m. Eastern time. And in Paris, the CAC is up over 1% this morning. Again, driven by corporate earnings, and there's broad strength in the European markets despite the new tariffs going into effect today. Turning your attention over to Asia, and in Asia, basically saw gains. You saw the Nikkei was up 0.65%. Sentiment's improving. Financial stocks outperformed. Hong Kong, the Hang Seng finished higher by 0.69% with gains in financial and tech stocks. And in China, rose 0.16. The session saw modest gains amid stronger than expected July export growth. It was really the July export growth was really driven by front loading of shipments ahead of the new tariffs that are expected to take effect. So yeah, that was positive. And then you look at it, oil this morning, and oil is trading higher. It's up 0.61%. You got WTI at $64.74. You got Brent at $67.30. You look at yesterday's stockpiles report from the Energy Information Administration, and they actually showed a drawdown of 3.029 million barrels. That's positive for oil prices. So yeah, but that's what I have for you in terms of in terms of morning market update report, Emily.
Bill, as you mentioned, a number of catalysts to be tracking this morning, and you're doing just that using your NewsWare. You're following all of that political information, geopolitical information, tariff information coming out of the White House. You're following that any commentary and clues from the Fed, along with the economic data that will be closely watched today, as you pointed out, given last week's economic indicators. And then the other area that there's still a number of catalysts to be watching is earnings action, because of the companies that are earning, a bunch of interesting ones that did come out that are worth noting, and plenty to look ahead to. So Bill, let's start there. What is going on in terms of earnings action?
Let's talk about Airbnb, ABNB, Apple Boy, Nancy Boy. They beat by 9 cents, and they did it on higher revenue. Stocks down 7.5% this morning. We're talking DoorDash, DASH. They beat by 22 cents. They did that on higher revenue. That stock's up 6.98%. Then you're talking Apple Oven, ticker APP, Apple Paul. They beat by 44 cents on higher revenue. Look at Apple Oven this morning. It's trading. It's down a little less than 1%. We'll see if that loss will continue. And then you got to talk about DraftKings, DKNG, David Kilo, Nancy Grace. I mean, they beat by 3 cents. They did it on higher revenue. You look at DraftKings, it's up 7.76% this morning. So yeah, a lot of good earnings came out last night. And today, after the bell, you get Flutter Entertainment, the sports betting place, FLUT, Frank, Larry, Uncle Thomas. Their EPS is $2.55. Expected move is 6.11%. You get Trade Desk, TDD, Tom David, their EPS is 42 cents with the expected move of 13.57%. Then you get Gilead Sciences, ticker GILD, Grace India, Larry David. Their EPS is $1.95 with an expected move of 4.81% when they release after the bell today.
We'll be keeping an eye on those using our earnings alert on our NewsWare. This helps you keep track of all of that information, gather it as it comes out. And before we move on to economic events, I have to point out that DKNG, DraftKings, was your pick of the day yesterday, up solidly this morning. We will do a full check-in on that by the time we get to the end of the show, so stick with us to the end. Now to the day's economic events, a couple of important indicators to keep track of today, and some more Fed speak. And as you told us, Bill, you're really keeping track of that Fed speak to continue to get clues. This softening stance on possible rate cuts has really boosted the market. So an important area here. What is going on in terms of the day's economic events?
Well, the key one today is at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time when we get the jobless claims. They're expected to come in between 220 and 222K. The previous week, they came in at 218, which was slightly above the week before. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that. Then at 8:30, you also have productivity and costs. And at 10 a.m. This morning, we're going to hear from Atlanta Fed Bank President Raphael Bostic. I mean, yesterday, Lisa Cook spoke. She's a Fed governor, and she expressed concern about the July jobs report, describing hiring as concerning and suggesting it could indicate a turning point or inflection point for the U.S. economy. And then there were comments from Neil Kashkari of the Minneapolis Fed, who said the economy is slowing, and that means in the near-term future it may be appropriate to start adjusting the Fed funds rate. And he is still talking about rate cuts, 2 rate cuts by the end of the year. He said it seems reasonable to him. And Mary Daly of the San Francisco Fed, she also indicated that the Fed may need to lower interest rates in the coming months due to a slowdown in the labor market. She emphasized that the job market has softened. And then she went on to say, a softening labor market is undesirable because when it starts to falter, it tends to decline rapidly and severely. Yeah, that's true. I do think we're going to get a rate cut in September. I think later this month we have the Fed meeting in Jackson Hole, and it's going to be a pretty dovish meeting. So that's going to be positive for the markets. But that's what I have for you in terms of an economic update, Emily.
Bill, your breakdown on the economic events there is a perfect example of how combining the data and the indicators, those reports, along with Fed speak, really helps you put the pieces of the puzzle together to gauge how the market may be reacting. We looked at jobs data last week. We're looking at those jobless claims today and combining those with the commentary from the Fed about the concerns over the labor market in terms of how the economy is overall performing. That could give us clues that those rate cuts may come in quickly here in September, as you pointed out. So again, an example of how to put these pieces of the puzzle together. And the other area that you put pieces of the puzzle together are all the other days market moving information. Each day you're following a host of data information and news, looking at things like merger news, guidance news, shareholders meetings, and buyback news. You look at your stocks grouped together like your FANG stocks and your Dow 30 stocks. So Bill, what else do you see is possibly moving the markets today?
Just doing a quick data check. I'm looking at my Dow stocks. I got 22 higher, 2 unchanged, and 6 lower. That's positive. In terms of my FANG stocks, a little weakness in Amazon. Everything else is higher. That's good. Looking at some of the news behind the tape, like Google, they said that customer data was hit by Salesforce voice phishing breach. Interesting. Elon Musk is out there saying it's high time that we open source code Grok 2, and he said it's going to make it happen next week. In terms of Dow Jones 30 news, you got to talk about Apple, AAPL. They pledged a new $100 billion investment in the U.S. in an effort to avoid any new tariffs on semiconductors. Disney, DIS, they reached an agreement for exclusive rights to many of TKO's high-profile events. TKO is the World Wrestling Federation. They do wrestling events, and Disney just got exclusive rights for many of them. Microsoft hired one of the founders of Google's DeepMind to help it catch up in the AI race. In terms of merger news, Starboard Value, they build over a 90% in ticker ROG, Rogers, Richard Oscar Grace. RNA, Richard Nancy Apple. Novartis is making a takeover approach on the stock. RNA, Richard Nancy Apple. In terms of guidance news, TKO Group did release earnings last night. They said they see full year revenue coming in $463 billion to $469 billion. Street estimates 4.58. So yeah, that's an uptick. APP11 ticker APP. They see Q3 revenue coming in $132 billion to $134 billion. Street estimate was 130. So APP11 that's very positive. Kenvue, KVUE. They see full year 2025 adjusted EPS coming in at $1 to $1.05, but the street estimate had it at $1.13. That's a downtick. YETI, YETI, they say they raised their full year 2025 adjusted EPS view to $2.34 to $2.48. Street estimate has it at $2.13. That's a big uptick. In terms of buyback news, Airbnb, ABNB, they announced a 6 billion share repurchasing program. And QSR, that's Restaurant Brands, Quinton, Sam, Richard, they announced a 1 billion stock repurchasing plan. And that's what I have for you in terms of news in the tape today.
This is the type of data that NewsWare delivers daily. It's factual, it's market moving, and our alerting functions bring it to your attention as it happens. Go to www.newsware.com now and sign up for the trial and see for yourself the benefits that professional Newswire delivers. It is now that time of the show for the Trade Talk Pick of the Day. Bill, what is your pick of the day today?
Going with Pinterest, PINS, Paul, India, Nancy, Sam. Earnings are out after the bell, due out after the bell today. EPS is 34 cents. Expected move is 11.07%. Look at yesterday's call volume. 14,600 calls traded to 11,000 puts. It's positive. Open interest, 241K versus 193K. That's positive. Major brokers are positive. They're raising, stock did raise guidance last quarter. That's a positive aspect as well. In terms of an entry price, I got to get it under 40. I'm thinking $39.50 to $40, somewhere in that range, but I want to get in under 40. But that's my pick of the day. Pinterest, ticker PINS, Paul, India, Nancy, Sam, Emily.
Pinterest on an earnings play today and looking for that specific entry point. That is a strategy that you used yesterday with your pick of the day. We did point it out earlier in the show, but in just a moment, we will do a full recap on that pick of the day. But first, let's take a look at the current breaking headlines that have hit the tape in our hot off the press segment. Bill, take it away.
Okay, what do we see here? Intel drops 3% after Trump calls on the CEO to resign. Ooh. Yeah, President Donald Trump stated in Truth Social post, the CEO of Intel is highly conflicted and must resign immediately. There's no solution to this problem. Oh, gosh. Government shouldn't get involved in business. Google to commit to $1 billion to support AI education and job training. Yeah. Eli Lilly announced ATTAIN-1 trials met primary and secondary endpoints. 2 U.S. senators launched investigation into UNH, United Healthcare, over nursing home payments. Disney thriving parks are buying time to figure out streaming. Costco, July comparable store sales were up 6.4%. That came out last night after the bell. That's all I'm seeing this morning, Emily.
Okay, Bill, before we get to trading on this Thursday, let's do that check-in on yesterday's pick of the day. I did point it out earlier in the show was DraftKings. You did tell us that they did report earnings. And before we get to a deeper dive on that, I did see a number of buy ratings and price target raises on the stock this morning. When it comes to earnings, they did beat, well beyond analysts' estimates. They reported a Q2 EPS of 38 cents. It was 25 cents better than analyst estimates out there. Revenue for the quarter came in at $1.51 billion versus a consensus of 1.4. In terms of guidance, the company sees a full year 2025 revenue of 6.2 to 6.4 billion, and that is ahead, the higher end of the consensus of 6.3 billion. The company's Q2 sales jump was credited to better spending more on average. And speaking of being up, the stock is up, as you pointed out, and it's been climbing solidly really all morning. How did your call work out?
Hey, it worked out fabulous. I mean, listen, the stock opened up at $44.80 yesterday, and then it fell to $44.70. Now, I mean, I was thinking 44.50 to 44.70 is what I said, so it did hit 44.70, and then it closed at 45.36, and after the bell, it hit a high of 49.60. It's already traded a high of 49.25 today, but it's up big. It's up 7%. So you got to appreciate DraftKings, DKNG. It was a winner.
Adding that one to the win column, Bill, here, and I'm looking at some of these numbers. This one up more than 7% in my notes. A number of pick of the days that have been earnings plays that were up 8%, 22%. Just another solid win there. Another call amongst all the earnings. You found a solid win, and we will check in with you tomorrow about today's Pinterest pick of the day. Bill, thank you as always for your expert insight. Join us back here tomorrow to end your trading week with NewsWare's Trade Talk, when we provide the facts, themes, and trading ideas for the day ahead. Again, I'm your host, Emily Vani, here with trading anchor Bill Olson. Traders, you know what to do. Let's go out there and make some green.